Girl refuses to talk at school. Principal checks her backpack and immediately calls police. Emma Davies slumped lower in her seat as Ms. Patel's voice droned on about cellular respiration. 3 weeks ago, she would have been furiously taking notes, her hand shooting up to answer questions. Now, her notebook remained closed, her pencil untouched, her eyes fixed on the small scratch on her desk. Emma? Ms. Patel's voice cut through her thoughts. Can you tell us what happens during the Krebs cycle? 27 pairs of eyes turned toward her. Emma felt her throat tighten, her palms dampen with sweat. She shook her head slightly, keeping her eyes down. Ms. Patel's brow furrowed with concern. See me after class, please, a few students whispered. Emma heard Mackenzie Turner snicker from 2 rows back. Freak, someone muttered. When the bell rang, Emma remained seated as others filed out. Ms. Patel pulled a chair beside her desk. Emma, this is the 3rd class this week where you haven't participated. Your last quiz was blank. Ms. Patel's voice was gentle. You've always been one of my best students. Is everything okay at home? Emma stared at her hands, twisting a loose thread on her sweater sleeve. Did something happen with your friends? With Jason? At the mention of Jason's name, Emma flinched almost imperceptibly. But Ms. Patel noticed. Emma, if you're in trouble, I can help you, but you need to talk to me. Emma finally looked up, her eyes glassy with unshed tears. She opened her mouth, then closed it, shaking her head. Ms. Patel sighed. I'm going to have to speak with Principal Winters about this, and your parents. Emma's eyes widened in panic. She grabbed her backpack, clutching it tightly to her chest, as she bolted from the classroom. In the hallway, students streamed toward their next classes, a river of noise and movement. Emma pressed herself against the wall, trying to become invisible. Her backpack felt unusually heavy against her chest, a physical reminder of the weight she'd been carrying for the past 18 days. Hey, Davies! Emma froze at the sound of Trent Wilson's voice. He sauntered toward her, flanked by 2 football players. Jason Cooper wasn't with them, but his absence didn't make Trent any less intimidating. Still playing the mute game? Trent grinned, leaning close enough that she could smell the mint gum he was chewing. That's smart. Very smart. One of the other boys laughed. Yeah, smart for once. Emma tightened her grip on her backpack, her knuckles whitening. You know, Trent continued, his voice dropping to a whisper, Jason's getting really worried about you. Says he misses your conversations. The way he said conversations made Emma's stomach turn. He wants to make sure you're not having second thoughts about your little arrangement. The warning bell rang, and Trent straightened up. See? You around, Davies. Remember, silence is golden. He tapped her backpack, and Emma flinched as if he'd struck her. As the boys walked away, Emma slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor, her backpack still clutched to her chest. She was going to be late for English, but she couldn't make herself move. The hallway emptied as the final bell rang, leaving her alone with the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead and the distant sound of teachers beginning their lessons. Emma, what are you doing out here? Mrs. Rodriguez, the school counselor, stood over her, concern etched across her face. Emma had always liked Mrs. Rodriguez with her colorful scarves and kind eyes behind tortoiseshell glasses, but now she couldn't bear to look at her. You should be in class, honey. Come on, I'll walk you. Emma shook her head, finally finding her voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. I can't. Mrs. Rodriguez crouched down beside her. Can't go to class, or can't talk about what's bothering you? Both. The word felt like glass in her throat. Mrs. Rodriguez nodded slowly. Okay. How about we go to my office instead? You don't have to talk if you don't want to. You can just sit for a while. After a moment, Emma nodded, allowing Mrs. Rodriguez to help her up. As they walked toward the counselor's office, Emma felt her phone vibrate in her pocket. She knew without looking that it was another text from Jason. They'd been coming every few hours for days now. Remember our deal, Emma. Keep your mouth shut. If you tell anyone, I'll make sure everyone sees those pictures. Don't be stupid, Emma. Think about what happens if you talk. Mrs. Rodriguez's office was warm and inviting, with plants on the windowsill and student artwork on the walls. Emma sank into the worn leather couch, still holding her backpack. Would you like some water or tea? I have that peppermint kind you like. Emma shook her head. Okay. Mrs. Rodriguez sat in her chair, not pushing, just present. You know, Emma, sometimes the hardest things to talk about are the things we most need to share. But I understand, if you're not ready. Emma stared at the potted succulent on the windowsill, its leaves reaching toward the sunlight. She thought about how plants never had to make complicated choices or carry terrible secrets. They just grew toward the light, simple and uncomplicated. After 15 minutes of silence, Mrs. Rodriguez spoke again. Emma, Ms. Patel is concerned. About you, so am I. Your other teachers have noticed changes too. Mr. Winters needs to be informed. We'll need to call your parents. Panic bubbled up in Emma's chest. No! The word burst from her before she could stop it. Please don't call my parents. Mrs. Rodriguez leaned forward. Why not, Emma? Your parents love you. They would want to know if you're struggling. They can't know. Emma's voice was barely audible. No one can know. Know what, Emma? Emma shook her head, tears spilling onto her cheeks. She hugged her backpack tighter. Mrs. Rodriguez noticed the death grip Emma had on her backpack. Emma, is there something in your backpack that you're worried about? Emma's breathing quickened. She thought about what was inside, nestled between her history textbook and her lunch. The evidence, the proof. The thing that could ruin lives, hers, included. Emma, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Are you in danger? Is someone threatening you? The concern in Mrs. Rodriguez's voice nearly broke Emma's resolve. For a fleeting moment, she considered telling everything. About the party at Trent's house, about what she'd seen, about Jason's threats, about what she'd found and kept as insurance. But then she thought about the consequences. The pictures. The humiliation, her parents' disappointment, the college scholarship she'd lose. I'm fine, she whispered, the lie bitter on her tongue. Mrs. Rodriguez sighed, clearly not believing her. Emma, if you won't talk to me, and you won't let me call your parents, then Principal Winters will need to get involved. This has gone beyond a bad day or a rough week. Your behavior suggests something serious is going on. Emma felt trapped. The walls of the cozy office seemed to close in around her. Can I just go back to class, please? I don't think that's a good idea, right? Now, why don't you stay here and rest while I speak with Mr. Winters? We'll figure this out together, Emma. As Mrs. Rodriguez left the office, Emma's phone vibrated again. With trembling hands, she pulled it out and read the new message from Jason. Saw you talking to the counselor. Remember, one word and everyone sees those pictures from Trent's party. Your choice, Emma. Emma dropped the phone as if it had burned her. She thought about the night that had changed everything. The party she shouldn't have gone to, the upstairs bedroom she shouldn't have entered. What she'd seen Jason and Trent doing, what she'd taken as proof. The threats that had followed when Jason realized she knew. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was her mom. Hi, sweetie, just checking in. Dad and I are worried about you. You've been so quiet lately. Talk to us? Love you. Emma felt the tears coming faster now. She wanted nothing more than to tell her parents everything. Her dad, a detective with the local police department, would know what to do. Her mom, a high school English teacher in the neighboring district, would hold her and tell her it would be okay. But the stakes were too high. The pictures Jason had taken of her at the party, when she'd had too much to drink and made stupid choices, would destroy her reputation, her future. And what she'd seen Jason and Trent doing, what she had proof of in her backpack, could destroy lives. It wasn't just about her anymore. The door opened, and Principal Winters walked in with Mrs. Rodriguez. Tall and imposing with his salt and pepper hair and perpetually serious expression, Mr. Winters had always intimidated Emma a little. Now, she felt like she might be sick. "Emma," he said, taking the seat Mrs. Rodriguez had vacated. "I understand you're going through something difficult. I want to help you, but I can't do that if you won't communicate." Emma stared at the floor, silent. "Your teachers report that you've stopped participating in class, stopped turning in assignments, and in some cases, stopped speaking altogether. This is not like you. Your GPA has always been exceptional. You've never had behavioral issues. Something has clearly changed." He leaned forward, his voice softening. Slightly. "Is someone hurting you, Emma? Are you being bullied? Threatened?" Emma shook her head, though the question hit painfully close to the truth. "Then help me understand. Because right now, I'm concerned about your well-being, and I'm concerned about the well-being of everyone at this school." The mention of everyone at this school made Emma's head snap up. Did he know something? Had someone talked? Mr. Winters noticed her reaction. "Emma, when a student's behavior changes this dramatically, we have to consider all possibilities. Are you involved in something that could be harmful to yourself or others?" Emma clutched her backpack even tighter. Mr. Winters' eyes narrowed, focusing on the backpack. "Emma, I need to check your backpack." "No." The word tore from her throat, raw and desperate. "I'm afraid I have to insist. School policy allows us to search students' belongings if we have reasonable concern for safety." "You can't," Emma whispered, panic rising. "Please, you don't understand." "Then help me understand, Emma. Talk to me." Emma felt cornered, trapped. If she didn't hand over her backpack, they'd take it anyway and find what she'd hidden. If she told the truth, Jason would release the pictures. If she kept silent, her grades would continue to plummet, and her future would still be at risk. There was no way out. "Emma," Mrs. Rodriguez said gently, "whatever you're going through, whatever you're afraid of, we can help you. But you have to trust us." Trust. Such a simple word for such a complicated thing. Who could she trust when the person she'd trusted most, Jason, her boyfriend of 2 years, had betrayed her in the worst possible way? "Last chance, Emma," Mr. Winters said firmly. "Either you tell us what's going on, or I need to see what's in your backpack." Emma looked between them, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribcage. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The secret was lodged in her throat like a stone. "I'm sorry, but I need to check your backpack now, Emma." Mr. Winters reached for the bag. Emma's grip loosened. She was too tired to fight anymore. Maybe it was better this way. Maybe once it was out in the open, the crushing weight would finally lift. Mr. Winters carefully opened the backpack, removing items one by one. Textbooks, a half-eaten lunch, a water bottle, a calculator. Then his hand stilled as he pulled out a small black notebook with a torn cover. It wasn't one of Emma's school notebooks. "What's this?" he asked, turning it over in his hands. Emma closed her eyes, unable to watch as he opened it. There was a long, heavy silence. Then, Mr. Winters' sharp intake of breath. "Mrs. Rodriguez, please stay with Emma. I need to make a phone call immediately." Emma knew exactly who he was calling. She'd seen her father make enough arrests to recognize the grim determination in Mr. Winters' voice, the careful way he handled the notebook, as if it were evidence, which of course it was. As Mr. Winters left the room, Emma finally spoke, her voice hollow. "It's not what you think." Mrs. Rodriguez sat beside her on the couch. "What is it then, Emma? Help me understand." Emma took a shuddering breath. She'd kept the secret for 18 days, carrying it like rocks in her pockets, weighing her down, drowning her. Maybe it was time to let go. "It started at Trent Wilson's party," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I wasn't supposed to be there. My parents thought I was at a study group. But Jason wanted to go, so I went with him. The story spilled out of her then. How she'd gone looking for a bathroom upstairs, how she'd opened the wrong door, how she'd seen Jason and Trent with the notebook, counting money, bagging white powder into small packages, how she'd seen the guns, how she'd quietly closed the door, but not before Jason had spotted her. He found me later, said it wasn't what I thought, that they were just holding it for someone else. He swore they weren't dealing, but I didn't believe him. Then he got angry, said I had to keep quiet, that no one would believe me anyway. Mrs. Rodriguez nodded encouragingly when Emma's voice faltered. The next day at school, he showed me pictures he'd taken of me at the party. I'd had too much to drink. The pictures were bad. He said if I told anyone what I'd seen, he'd send them to everyone. Emma wiped at her tears with her sleeve. I was scared, but I was also angry. So when I saw the notebook fall out of his gym bag in the hallway a few days later, I took it. I thought maybe my dad could use it as evidence. But then I got scared about the pictures and about what would happen to Jason if he went to jail. So I just kept it and kept quiet. Oh, Emma. Mrs. Rodriguez put a gentle hand on her shoulder. You've been carrying this all by yourself. Emma nodded miserably. I didn't know what to do. Jason kept threatening me, watching me. I was afraid to talk to anyone. I couldn't focus in class. I couldn't sleep. I just wanted it all to go away. The door opened, and Mr. Winters returned, his expression grave. The police are on their way. Emma, I've spoken with Detective Sanders. They'll need your statement. My dad? Emma asked, suddenly terrified of facing her father with this. Is my dad coming? No, Mr. Winters said. Your father has been recused from this case due to your involvement. Detective Sanders will be handling it. Emma felt both relief and disappointment. She wasn't ready to face her father, but she desperately wanted his reassurance. What about Jason and Trent? She asked, her voice small. Do they know? Officers are being dispatched to their classrooms as we speak, Mr. Winters said. Emma, what you did was very dangerous. This notebook contains detailed information about drug deals, suppliers, customers, many of them students at this school. You should have come forward immediately. Emma hung her head. I know. I was scared. Scared is understandable, he said, his voice softening slightly. But next time, and I sincerely hope there isn't a next time, remember that staying silent can sometimes be more dangerous than speaking up. As if on cue, Emma's phone buzzed again. Mrs. Rodriguez reached for it. May I? Numbly, Emma nodded. Mrs. Rodriguez read the message, her expression darkening. This is evidence of blackmail and harassment. The police will need to see this too. For the first time in 18 days, Emma felt a tiny flicker of hope. The secret was out. She wasn't carrying it alone anymore. Outside the office window, she saw 2 police cars pull into the school parking lot, their lights flashing but sirens silent. In minutes, officers would be escorting Jason and Trent out of their classrooms. The notebook would be entered into evidence. Her phone, with its trail of threatening messages, would probably be taken too. There would be questions, statements, maybe even a trial. Her parents would know everything about the party, the drinking, the lies. There would be consequences. But as Mrs. Rodriguez squeezed her shoulder and Mr. Winters went to meet the officers, Emma realized that consequences weren't always punishment. Sometimes, they were just the next step toward making things right. For the first time in 18 days, Emma took a deep, full breath. The weight hadn't disappeared entirely, but it had shifted, become manageable. She wasn't drowning anymore. When Detective Sanders knocked on the office door a few minutes later, Emma was ready to talk. Detective Sanders was nothing like Emma had expected. With her cropped gray hair, weathered face, and eyes that seemed to look straight through pretense, she reminded Emma more of her grandmother than a police officer. Emma Davies, she said, taking the seat across from her in the small conference room adjacent to the principal's office. I'm Detective Vivian Sanders. I understand you've had a difficult few weeks. Emma nodded, her fingers nervously picking at a loose thread on her sleeve. I need you to tell me everything. From the beginning, Detective Sanders said, her voice firm but not unkind. Don't leave anything out, even if it seems unimportant to you. Small details can matter. Mrs. Rodriguez sat beside Emma, a silent support as she began her story again. This time, Emma included details she'd skipped earlier. The date of the party, Friday, April 5th. The names she'd recognized in the notebook, at least 7 other students from Brighton High. The gun she'd seen, a small black handgun that Jason had tucked into his waistband when he caught her watching. And you're certain it was Jason Cooper and Trent Wilson you saw with the drugs? Detective Sanders asked, taking meticulous notes. Yes, Emma said quietly. They were counting money and packaging, something white, powder. I don't know exactly what it was. Based on the notebook, we believe it was cocaine, and possibly fentanyl, Detective Sanders said, her expression grave. The street value of the amounts listed here is substantial. This isn't some kids selling a little weed to their friends, Emma. This is organized, dangerous drug trafficking. Emma felt sick. She'd known it was bad, but hearing it stated so bluntly made the reality crash down on her. I didn't know it was that serious. That's why keeping silent was so dangerous, Detective Sanders said. Not just for you, but for everyone who might have purchased from them. Fentanyl is killing kids your age every day. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I was scared. Jason threatened to share those pictures. We'll address the blackmail and the threats, Detective Sanders assured her. Possession of explicit images of a minor is a serious crime, even when the possessor is also a minor. Did Jason ever specifically say what the pictures showed? Emma's face burned with shame. At the party, I had too much to drink. Someone suggested body shots, and I let them take pictures. I'm not even sure who took them. I just remember the flashes. Jason showed me one later where I'm not wearing much. Do you know if these images were shared with anyone else? I don't think so. Jason just threatened to share them if I talked about what I saw. Detective Sanders nodded. We'll seize his phone and devices as evidence. If the images exist, we'll find them. A knock at the door interrupted them. An officer poked his head in. Detective, we've secured the suspects and searched their lockers. You're going to want to see what we found. Detective Sanders excused herself, leaving Emma with Mrs. Rodriguez. You're doing great, Emma, Mrs. Rodriguez said, squeezing her hand. I know this is hard, but you're doing the right thing. What about my parents? Emma asked, the anxiety that had momentarily receded, now rushing back. Do they know yet? Mr. Winters called your mother. She's on her way. Emma's stomach clenched. Her mother would be so disappointed, not just about the party and the drinking, but about keeping such a dangerous secret. She sounded worried, Emma, not angry, Mrs. Rodriguez added as if reading her thoughts. Parents just want their children to be safe. Before Emma could respond, the door opened again. Detective Sanders returned, accompanied by an officer carrying an evidence bag containing what looked like a small gym bag. Emma, I need to ask you some more questions, Detective Sanders said, her tone even more serious than before. The officers found this in Trent Wilson's locker. Inside are approximately 200 grams of what field tests indicate is cocaine, pre-packaged for sale, along with a handgun matching your description. Emma stared at the bag, feeling lightheaded. That's a lot. Yes, it is. We also found over $2,000 in cash in Jason Cooper's locker, hidden in a hollowed-out textbook. Both are claiming the other is responsible. Both are denying everything. Detective Sanders leaned forward. Emma, I need to know if anyone else was involved. The notebook mentions pickups and drop-offs, suppliers and buyers. Were there other students working with Jason and Trent? Emma thought carefully. I only saw the two of them that night, but I heard them mention someone named LG who was supposed to be bringing something the next day, and they talked about the college guy who was their connection. I don't know who they meant. Detective Sanders made a note. LG could be Liam Garrison. He's a known associate of several drug distributors in the area, and the college guy might be a supplier from State University. She looked up at Emma. Did Jason or Trent ever mention going to campus for parties or to meet someone? Emma nodded, slowly. Jason talked about a guy named Dex at State. Said he threw the best parties, had the best stuff. Dexter Reeves, Detective Sanders murmured, writing the name down. We've had our eye on him for a while. The conversation was interrupted by a commotion outside the door. Emma heard her mother's voice, tense and worried, asking where her daughter was. That'll be your mother, Detective Sanders said, standing. We'll continue this later. For now, I'm going to give you some time with her. But Emma? Her expression softened slightly. You did the right thing coming forward. It took courage. As Detective Sanders opened the door, Charlotte Davies rushed, in her face pale with worry. She barely acknowledged the detective before pulling Emma into a fierce hug. Emma, sweetheart, are you okay? Mr. Winters called, but he didn't explain much, just said there was an incident and the police were involved and… She stopped, pulling, back to look at her daughter, noticing the tear tracks on her face, the exhaustion in her eyes. What happened? Are you hurt? I'm not hurt, Mom, Emma said, her voice breaking. But I messed up. I messed up so bad. Mrs. Rodriguez stood, offering her chair to Charlotte. I'll give you two some privacy, she said, stepping out with Detective Sanders. Once they were alone, Emma told her mother everything. The party, the lies, what she'd seen, the threats, the notebook. With each confession, she expected anger or disappointment to cloud her mother's face. Instead, there was only concern and a growing determination. Oh, Emma, Charlotte said when she'd finished, wiping away her daughter's tears. Why didn't you come to us? Your father and I would have helped you. I was scared, Emma whispered. About the pictures, about getting Jason in trouble, about you and Dad being disappointed in me. Listen to me, Charlotte said firmly, taking Emma's hands in hers. Nothing is more important to us than your safety. Yes, I'm upset that you lied about where you were and that you were drinking. Yes, we'll need to discuss that. But Emma, you were being blackmailed and threatened by someone dealing dangerous drugs. That's not something you should ever have to handle alone. Emma collapsed against her mother, sobbing in earnest now. Charlotte held her, stroking her hair the way she had when Emma was small and woke from nightmares. Is Dad coming? Emma asked when she could speak again. He's been called to the station because of this case. Since you're involved, he can't be part of the investigation. But he's being briefed. He'll meet us at home. Charlotte smoothed Emma's hair back from her face. He's worried sick about you. Is he mad? He's your father, Emma. He's worried. Not mad, though I think he might be plotting Jason Cooper's slow and painful demise. Despite everything, Emma felt a small smile tug at her lips. Her father's protective instincts were legendary in their household. The door opened, and Mr. Winters entered with Detective Sanders. Mrs. Davies, I've explained the situation to you on the phone, but Detective Sanders has some additional information to share. Detective Sanders took a seat across from them. Mrs. Davies, first let me assure you that we're taking the threats against Emma very seriously. Officers have confiscated Jason Cooper's and Trent Wilson's phones, and our tech team is analyzing them for the images Jason used to blackmail Emma. Both boys are currently in custody and will be charged with multiple felonies, including drug, trafficking, possession of a firearm on school property, and blackmail. What about the pictures? Charlotte asked, her arm still protectively around Emma. If those images exist, they could still be out there. If we find them, they'll be deleted, Detective Sanders assured her. Distribution of such images would constitute a separate crime of distributing child pornography, even if the distributor is also a minor. I don't think either of them will risk adding those charges to what they're already facing. Emma felt a wave of relief, though it was tempered by the sheer enormity of what was happening. Two of her classmates, one of them her boyfriend of 2 years, were facing serious criminal charges. Her own actions, the drinking, the lying, the silence, had contributed to the situation. What happens now? Charlotte asked. Emma will need to give a formal statement at the station, Detective Sanders explained. As a minor, you'll be present for that. We'll also need to interview her again as the investigation progresses, especially as we track down other individuals mentioned in the notebook. Will she have to testify? Charlotte's voice held a note of apprehension. It's too early to say. If the case goes to trial, possibly. But the evidence we've already collected is substantial. The notebook alone contains detailed records of transactions going back months, with names, dates, and amounts. The firearms and drugs found in their possession today add weight to the charges. They might opt to cooperate in exchange for reduced sentences, especially if they can lead us to their suppliers. Mr. Winters cleared his throat. As for school matters, Emma has missed a significant amount of work these past few weeks. Given the circumstances, her teachers will work with her to make up assignments and tests. Thank you, Charlotte said, then hesitated. What about the other students, the ones named in the notebook? We'll be investigating each one, Detective Sanders said. Some may be charged, depending on their level of involvement. Others, those who were only buyers, may be referred to diversion programs or drug counseling. Our primary interest is in dismantling the distribution network. The reality of how many lives would be affected by what she'd found, what she'd revealed, hit Emma hard. Classmates she'd known for years might face criminal charges. Families would be devastated. The school would be rocked by scandal. I never meant for all this to happen, she said softly. None of this is your fault, Emma, Detective Sanders said firmly. You didn't create this situation. Jason and Trent made their choices long before you discovered what they were doing. Mr. Winters nodded in agreement. Detective Sanders is right. You're not responsible for their actions. In fact, by coming forward, even if it was reluctantly, you may have prevented much worse consequences. Fentanyl is deadly, Emma. Lives may have been saved because of what happened today. Emma hadn't considered that perspective. She'd been so consumed by fear of the immediate repercussions, the threatened photos, Jason's anger, her parents' reaction, that she hadn't thought about the bigger picture. Lives saved. The idea didn't erase the guilt entirely, but it helped. Mrs. Davies, if you're ready, I can escort you and Emma to the station now for her formal statement, Detective Sanders said, standing. The sooner we process this information, the sooner we can move forward with the investigation. Charlotte squeezed Emma's hand. We're ready. Let's get this done. As they gathered their things, Emma's phone vibrated one last time in Mrs. Rodriguez's possession. The counselor glanced at it, then handed it to Detective Sanders. Another message from Jason Cooper, she said grimly. Detective Sanders read it, her expression hardening. It appears Mr. Cooper is still attempting to threaten Emma, even after being taken into custody. His phone privileges will be revoked immediately. What did it say? Emma asked, both dreading and needing to know. Detective Sanders hesitated, then turned the phone so Emma could see. They can't hold me forever, Emma. Remember that. Emma felt a chill run through her, but her mother's arm tightened around her shoulders. He's wrong, Charlotte said fiercely. And he will never threaten you again. Not while your father and I are alive. As they walked through the halls toward the exit, Emma was acutely aware of the curious stares of students and teachers. News traveled fast in high school. By tomorrow, everyone would know what had happened, or at least some version of it. Outside, the April sunshine seemed incongruously bright. Two police cruisers waited in the parking lot, along with Charlotte's familiar blue Subaru. As they approached the vehicles, Emma spotted something that made her stop short. Jason and Trent were being led out a side door, hands cuffed behind their backs, officers at their elbows. Jason looked up at that exact moment, his eyes locking with Emma's across the parking lot. For 2 years, those eyes had looked at her with affection, with desire, with laughter. Now they held only cold hatred. Jason's face contorted with rage, and he lunged forward, causing the officer beside him to tighten his grip. "You're dead, Emma," he shouted, his voice carrying across the lot. "You hear me? You're dead." The officer yanked him back roughly, forcing him toward the waiting patrol car. Trent, walking ahead of him, didn't even look up. Emma stood frozen, the threat echoing in her ears. It wasn't until her mother pulled her close, shielding her from Jason's glare, that she remembered to breathe. "Don't listen to him," Charlotte said firmly. "He's just trying to scare you." "It's working," Emma admitted, her voice small. "Detective." Sanders approached them, her expression concerned. "Mrs. Davies, in light of that outburst, I'd like to discuss some safety precautions for your family. After we take Emma's statement, I'll brief you and your husband on recommended security measures." "Security measures?" Emma echoed. "You think we're in danger?" "I think it's best to be cautious," Detective Sanders said carefully. "Jason and Trent may have connections we don't yet know about, and drug trafficking organizations don't appreciate having their operations disrupted." The implication hung in the air like a storm cloud. This wasn't over. In some ways, it was just beginning. As they drove to the police station, Emma stared out the window at the familiar streets of her hometown. The sandwich shop where she and Jason had their first date. The park where they'd spent countless afternoons studying. The movie theater where they'd held hands in the dark. How had she never seen who he really was? How had she fallen in love with someone capable of threatening her, of dealing drugs that could kill people, of carrying a gun to school? "Mom?" she asked as they waited at a red light. "How do you know when someone is lying to you?" Charlotte considered the question, her hands tight on the steering wheel. "You don't. Always. People can be very convincing when they want to be. Especially people we love and trust. We see what we expect to see. What we want to see. Then, how do you ever trust anyone?" "Oh, Emma." Charlotte sighed, reaching over to squeeze her daughter's hand. "You look for patterns, not single actions. You watch what people do when they think no one is looking. You listen to your instincts. And yes, sometimes you'll still get it wrong. That's part of being human." The light turned green, and they continued. Toward the station, the conversation pausing as Charlotte navigated a tricky intersection. "Will I have to change schools?" Emma asked after a while. "Do you want to?" Emma thought about facing her classmates after this. The whispers, the stares, the inevitable rumors. Some would blame her for what happened to Jason and Trent. Others might fear her because of her father's connection to the police. Many would simply see her as the center of the biggest scandal Brighton High had seen in years. But running away wouldn't solve anything. It might even make things worse. "No," she said finally. "I want to stay. I just don't know how to face everyone." "One day at a time," Charlotte said. "And you won't be alone. Your father and I will be with you every step of the way. So will Mrs. Rodriguez by the sound of it. And I suspect you'll find out who your real friends are pretty quickly." The police station came into view ahead, a modern brick building with cruisers parked in neat rows along one side. Emma had been here many times to visit her father, but never as a witness in a criminal investigation. As Charlotte parked the car, Emma took a deep breath. "Mum, I'm sorry. For lying about the party, for drinking, for not telling you and Dad what was happening." Charlotte turned to face her daughter fully. "I know you are, and we'll talk more about all of that later. But right now, what matters most is that you're safe, and that you're doing the right thing by telling the truth now." She smoothed Emma's hair back from her face. "I love you, Emma. Nothing will ever change that." I love you too, Mom. Together they walked into the station, where Detective Sanders waited to take Emma's statement, the first of many steps toward unraveling the truth, bringing justice, and eventually healing. As Emma sat in the small interview room, recounting her story once more for the official record, she thought about the notebook that had weighed so heavily in her backpack, the secret that had silenced her for 18 days, the truth that was. Now, finally, being spoken. It still wasn't easy. But as her mother sat beside her, a steady presence of support and love, Emma realized that some burdens weren't meant to be carried alone. Sometimes the path to freedom began with simply asking for help. And for the first time in weeks, despite the uncertainty that lay ahead, Emma felt something like hope. 3 days after what the local newspaper had dubbed the Brighton High drug bust, Emma sat at the kitchen table, picking at a bowl of cereal. She didn't really want. The house felt unnaturally quiet, with both her parents home on a Wednesday morning. Her mother had taken personal leave from her teaching position, and her father had been temporarily reassigned to desk duty due to the family connection to the case. Robert Davies entered the kitchen, his phone pressed to his ear, expression serious. "Yes, I understand. Thank you for the update, Vivian." He ended the call, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair before joining Emma at the table. "That was Detective Sanders," he said, pouring himself a cup of coffee. "Jason and Trent have been formally charged. In addition to the drug and weapons charges, they're adding witness intimidation and extortion based on the text messages they found." Emma nodded, pushing her cereal around the bowl. "What about the pictures?" Her father's jaw tightened, the way it always did when he was trying to control his anger. "They found them on Jason's phone. The tech team has deleted all copies they could locate, but they're still checking his cloud accounts." He reached across the table, covering Emma's hand with his own. "Detective Sanders says the photos weren't as compromising as Jason led you to believe. You were fully clothed in all of them, just looking a bit intoxicated." Relief washed over Emma like a wave. "He lied about that too?" "It appears so. Classic intimidation tactic, making you believe he had something worse than he actually did." Emma closed her eyes, feeling foolish and relieved all at once. "I can't believe I fell for it." "You were scared, Em. Fear makes it hard to think clearly." Her father squeezed her hand. "Trust me, I've seen it happen to people with far more life experience than you." Charlotte entered the kitchen, dressed for the first time in days in something other than sweatpants and a t-shirt. "I just got off the phone with Mr. Winters. They're ready for you to return to school whenever you feel up to it. Your teachers have prepared makeup work, and Mrs. Rodriguez wants to meet with you 3 times a week for the rest of the semester." Emma's stomach churned at the thought of returning to Brighton High. News of the arrests had dominated local media, with reporters camping outside the school for 2 days straight. Though none had mentioned Emma by name due to her status as a minor witness, anyone with half a brain could connect the dots. The toxic mix of speculation, rumor, and exaggeration that followed would be brutal. "Do I have to go back right away?" she asked, her voice smaller than she'd intended. Her parents exchanged a glance. "No," her father said firmly. "You can take a few more days if you need them. But eventually, you'll have to face it, Em." "I know." Emma pushed her bowl away, appetite completely gone. "It's just, everyone is going to be talking about it. About me." "Yes, they will," her mother agreed, sitting down next to her. "For a while. Then something else will happen, and they'll talk about that instead. High school has a short attention span." "What about Jason's friends? The ones who aren't in jail?" The question that had been haunting her for days finally escaped. "What if they try to, I don't know, get back at me somehow?" Her father's expression hardened. "The school has been made aware of the potential for retaliation. The resource officer will be paying extra attention to any unusual behavior. And Detective Sanders has spoken with the parents of several students who were mentioned in the notebook but not directly implicated." They've been warned that any harassment will be taken very seriously. It should have been reassuring. Instead, Emma felt a fresh wave of anxiety. So everyone knows it was me who turned them in? Not officially, her mother said carefully. Your name hasn't been released because you're a minor, but yes, people will likely figure it out. Emma pushed back from the table, suddenly needing to move. Maybe I should just switch schools. Start over somewhere else. If that's what you truly want, we can discuss it, her father said. But running away won't fix this, Emma. These kinds of rumors have a way of following you. And not all the attention will be negative, her mother added. What you did took courage. Some people will recognize that. I didn't want to do it, Emma reminded them, her voice tight with frustration. I kept quiet for over 2 weeks. Mr. Winters found the notebook. I didn't voluntarily turn it in. But when confronted, you told the truth, her father pointed out. You could have lied, claimed you didn't know what it was, that you found it. Somewhere. You didn't. Emma hadn't considered that perspective. In the chaos of the past few days, she'd been so focused on what she'd done wrong, going to the party, drinking, staying silent too long, that she hadn't given herself credit for what she'd eventually done right. The doorbell rang, startling, all 3 of them. Through the front window, Emma could see Detective Sanders standing on their porch, a folder tucked under her arm. Her father went to answer the door, returning a moment later with the detective. Sorry to drop by unannounced, Detective Sanders said, nodding hello to Emma and Charlotte. But I have some information that couldn't wait. Emma's pulse quickened. Did something happen with Jason and Trent? No. They're still in juvenile detention awaiting their hearing, Detective Sanders assured her. This is about the investigation into their supplier network. She set the folder on the table. Based on your information about Dex at State University, we were able to identify Dexter Reeves, a senior chemistry major with a history of drug-related offenses. We executed a search warrant on his apartment yesterday. She opened the folder, revealing photographs of what appeared to be a makeshift drug lab. Reeves was manufacturing synthetic opioids, including fentanyl, in his off-campus apartment. The amounts we found suggest he was supplying multiple distributors, not just Jason. And Trent. Emma stared at the photos, her stomach churning at the sight of chemical equipment, plastic bags of powder, and piles of cash. They were selling fentanyl at our school? Detective Sanders nodded grimly. According to the notebook, they had only begun offering it recently, marketing it as Super Oxy to students looking for a stronger high than prescription pills could provide. Charlotte gasped, her hand covering her mouth. My God, if Emma hadn't come forward... Exactly, Detective Sanders said, her eyes meeting Emma's. Fentanyl is deadly in even small doses. What you helped uncover may have prevented overdoses and deaths. The weight of that statement settled over Emma like a heavy blanket. People could have died, her classmates, people she knew. There's more, Detective Sanders continued, pulling out a list of names. We've identified 15 students at Brighton High who were customers, based on the notebook and text messages recovered from Jason and Trent's phones. 5 were regular buyers who may have been developing serious dependencies. All of their parents have been notified, and we're connecting them with addiction counseling services. Emma recognized several names on the list. Taylor Mackenzie, who sat behind her in calculus. Dylan West, who'd been on the swim team with Jason. Zoe Palmer, who'd always seemed so put together, so perfect. What will happen to them? She asked, quietly. Those who were only users, not dealers, are being referred to diversion programs rather than facing criminal charges, Detective Sanders explained. The focus is on getting them help, not punishment. Robert Davies, who had been standing, with his arms crossed, finally spoke. What about Reeves and the other individuals mentioned in the notebook? Reeves is facing federal charges due to the quantity and nature of the drugs he was manufacturing, Detective Sanders said. We're also investigating links to a larger... distribution network operating through several college campuses in the state. 2 more arrests were made this morning. She turned back to Emma. The reason I came by in person is that your information was instrumental in breaking this case. The prosecutor wanted me to inform you that you may be called as a witness in the cases against Jason and Trent, but your involvement in the larger investigation will be kept confidential to protect your safety. Protection, safety, the words reminded Emma of the threats Jason had made, both in text messages and in that final moment in the parking lot. You're dead, Emma. Do you think they would really try to hurt me? She asked, voicing the fear that had kept her awake at night. Or my family? Detective Sanders considered her question carefully. Jason Cooper has no prior history of violence, but he was carrying a firearm on school property, which suggests a willingness to escalate beyond mere threats. As a precaution, we've flagged your address in our system. Patrol cars will drive by regularly for the next few weeks, and all officers have been briefed on the situation. It wasn't entirely reassuring, but Emma appreciated the honesty. What about when I go back to school? She asked. The school resource officer has been fully briefed, Detective Sanders assured her. And I've personally spoken with Principal Winters about security measures. Your safety is being taken very seriously, Emma. After Detective Sanders left, the 3 Davises sat in silence, absorbing the magnitude of what they'd learned. Emma's thoughts kept returning to the list of names, her classmates who'd been buying drugs from Jason and Trent, possibly risking their lives without even knowing it. I need to go back, she said suddenly, surprising even herself. To school. Tomorrow. Her parents exchanged concerned glances. Are you sure, sweetheart? Her mother asked. There's no rush. Emma nodded, a determination she hadn't felt in weeks crystallizing within her. I'm sure. I can't hide forever. And after what Detective Sanders just told us, I need to face this. Her father studied her face, then nodded slowly. Okay, but your mom and I will drop you off and pick you up. No walking or taking the bus for a while. And you call us immediately if anything feels wrong, understood? Understood. That night, as Emma prepared for her return to Brighton High, she laid out her clothes, packed her backpack with freshly completed makeup assignments, and tried to quell the anxiety bubbling in her chest. She hadn't heard from any of her friends since that day in the principal's office. Not Lily, who she'd known since kindergarten. Not Marcos, who sat with her at lunch most days. Not Olivia, her lab partner and confidant. Their silence spoke volumes. Were they angry? Afraid to be associated with her? Or just unsure what to say? A soft knock at her bedroom door interrupted her thoughts. Her father entered, carrying something wrapped in a cloth. I brought you something, he said, sitting on the edge of her bed. He unwrapped the cloth, revealing a small canister with a pink case. It's pepper spray. Legal in Ohio. For anyone over 18, which you're not quite yet, but I'm making an exception. Emma took it hesitantly. Dad, do you really think I'll need this? Probably not, he admitted, but it'll make me feel better knowing you have it, just in case. He showed her how to hold it, how to remove the safety cap, how to aim. Keep it in your pocket, not buried in your backpack where you can't reach it quickly. She nodded, slipping it into the pocket of the jeans she'd laid out for tomorrow. Emma, her father said, his voice serious. I want you to know how proud I am of you. What you did, coming forward, telling the truth even when it was hard. That took real courage. Emma looked down, embarrassed by the praise she didn't feel she deserved. I should have told you right away. I was just so scared. Fear is natural. Overcoming it is what matters. He squeezed her shoulder. Try to get some sleep. Tomorrow will be tough, but you're tougher. After he left, Emma lay awake for a long time, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars on her ceiling, remnants of a childhood fascination with astronomy that she'd never bothered to remove. They seemed dimmer now, faded with time. When sleep finally came, It was filled with disjointed dreams of crowded hallways, whispered accusations, and Jason's face twisted in rage. Morning arrived too quickly. Emma dressed mechanically, ate the breakfast her mother insisted on without tasting it, and climbed into the back seat of her father's car for the drive to school. The pepper spray felt heavy in her pocket, a tangible reminder of the new reality she was facing. As they pulled into the school parking lot, Emma's heart pounded so hard she thought it might crack a rib. Students milled about outside, some glancing curiously at the police detective's car. A few pointed or nudged their friends. "You don't have to do this today," her mother said from the front seat, turning to face her. "We can turn around right now if you want." Emma took a deep breath. "No, I'm ready." She wasn't, not really, but waiting wouldn't make it any easier. Her father reached back, squeezing her hand. "Call us if you need anything. Anything at all. I can be here in 10 minutes. Emma nodded, steeling herself before opening the car door. The morning air was cool against her face as she stepped out, clutching her backpack strap like a lifeline. The conversations around her died down as heads turned in her direction. She felt the weight of dozens of stairs as she walked toward the front entrance, her legs moving on autopilot. Just as she reached the stairs, a figure stepped into her. Path. Taylor Mackenzie, one of the names on Detective Sanders's list. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face pale, but her expression wasn't angry as Emma had feared. It was grateful. "Emma," Taylor said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just wanted to say thank you. My parents found out about, they're getting me help. I didn't want it at first, but now I'm actually relieved." Before Emma could respond, Taylor hurried away, disappearing into the crowd of students. Stunned, Emma continued inside, where Mrs. Rodriguez was waiting by the entrance. "Good morning, Emma," she said warmly. "I'm glad to see you back. Why don't you come to my office first period? I've cleared it with your teachers." Emma nodded, numbly, following the counselor through hallways that seemed both familiar and alien. Students stepped aside as they passed, conversations halting mid-sentence. In the safety of Mrs. Rodriguez's office, Emma finally exhaled, unaware she'd been holding her breath. "How are you feeling?" Mrs. Rodriguez asked, offering her a cup of tea. "Like everyone is staring at me," Emma admitted, accepting the warm mug gratefully. "They probably are," Mrs. Rodriguez acknowledged with characteristic honesty. Her parents had fielded all calls and messages while she'd been home, giving her updates only when they thought necessary. "I'm sorry I didn't reach out," she said, feeling a pang of guilt at having doubted her friends. "No apologies needed," Marcos assured her. "We know this has been intense." That was an understatement. Emma looked between them, searching for signs of judgment or accusation. She found none. "You guys aren't mad about Jason and Trent?" Marcos snorted. "Mad that you exposed 2 guys selling dangerous drugs in our school?" "Yeah, no. I never liked Jason anyway," Olivia admitted, lowering her voice. "He was always trying to control who you spent time with, what you wore, classic red flags." Emma hadn't seen it that way at the time, but looking back, the signs had been there all along. Jason's concern when she spent time with other friends. His suggestions about her clothes. His jokes that always seemed to undermine her confidence just a little. "I feel so stupid," she whispered, picking at her sandwich without eating it, "for not seeing who he really was." "Hey, no," Marcos said firmly. "Don't do that to yourself. Jason fooled a lot of people, not just you." "Including me," came a new voice. Lily Roberts stood beside their table, her lunch tray in hand, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "Can I join you guys?" There was a moment of awkward silence. Lily had been part of Jason and Trent's crowd since the beginning of the year, gradually drifting away from her old friends, including Emma. "Sure," Emma said finally, moving over to make room. Lily sat down, not quite meeting anyone's eyes. I owe you an apology, Emma. I knew something weird was going on with Jason and Trent. I saw them with all this cash, having these private conversations. I didn't want to know, you know? It was easier to pretend everything was normal. Her honesty was unexpected, but appreciated. It's okay, Emma said. I didn't want to know either, even after I saw them with the drugs. I just wanted everything to go back to normal. Normal is overrated, Marcos declared, breaking the tension. Also possibly a myth. That earned a small laugh from the table, and conversation gradually shifted to safer topics. The upcoming chemistry test, Mr. Winter's terrible tie collection, the fact that the cafeteria's idea of spicy chicken was laughably mild. For a few minutes, Emma almost forgot about the whispers and stares. She almost felt like herself again. Then Zach Wilson, Trent's younger brother, walked past their table, deliberately bumping it hard enough to spill Olivia's water. Oops, he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Didn't see you there, snitch. Emma flinched as if she'd been slapped. Marcos stood up immediately, squaring off against Zach despite being several inches shorter. Back off, Wilson, he warned. Or what? Zach challenged, stepping closer. You gonna rat me out too? Get the cops called on me like your friend did to my brother? Your brother got himself arrested by dealing drugs, Olivia pointed out coldly, dabbing at the water with napkins. Emma just did what any responsible person would do. She kept quiet for weeks, Zach shot back. Only talked when she got caught with the evidence. Some hero. Emma felt her face burn with shame because there was truth in his accusation. She had kept quiet, too afraid of the consequences to do the right thing until forced. Before she could, "Respond, Officer Riley," the school resource officer appeared beside their table. "Everything okay here?" he asked, his tone casual, but his stance alert. Zach took a step back. "Just having a conversation, officer." "Uh-huh." Officer Riley didn't look convinced. "Well, your conversation is disrupting lunch. Why don't you head onto your table now, Mr. Wilson?" Zach shot Emma a venomous look before walking away, muttering under his breath. "You all right, Ms. Davies?" Officer Riley asked. Emma nodded, though her appetite had completely disappeared. "Yes. Thank you. Just doing my job. Don't hesitate to let me know if anyone is giving you trouble." With a nod to the table, he returned to his position by the cafeteria entrance. "Don't listen to Zach," Lily said, once Officer Riley was out of earshot. "He's just upset about Trent." "He's not entirely wrong, though," Emma admitted quietly. "I didn't come forward right away. I was too scared." "You're being too hard on yourself," Olivia insisted. "You were being blackmailed and threatened. And in the end, you did the right thing. That's what matters." Emma wasn't sure she believed that yet, but she appreciated the support. The rest of the day passed without major incident, though the whispers and stares continued. By the time the final bell rang, Emma was exhausted from the emotional roller coaster, but also relieved. She had survived her first day back. Her friends hadn't abandoned her. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than she'd feared. As promised, her father was waiting in the parking lot when she emerged from the building. She slid into the passenger seat with a sigh of relief. "How was it?" he asked, studying her face for signs of distress. "Weird," she admitted. "Everyone was staring and whispering. Zach Wilson called me a snitch at lunch. But my friends were actually really supportive." She hesitated, then added, "And Taylor Mackenzie thanked me. She said her parents are getting her help now." Her father smiled slightly as he pulled out of the parking lot. "See? Not all the ripples from this situation are negative." Ripples. It was an apt metaphor for what was happening. One action, her discovery of the notebook, her eventual decision to tell the truth, had sent ripples spreading outward, affecting lives in ways she couldn't have anticipated. Some of those ripples had brought pain and disruption. Others, apparently, had brought needed intervention and possibly healing. "Dad?" she asked as they stopped at a red light. "Do you think if I had come forward right away, things would have turned out differently?" Her father considered the question carefully. "Maybe, but second-guessing past decisions doesn't change them. What matters is that you did eventually do the right thing, and because of that, dangerous drugs are off the streets and kids who were at risk are getting help." It wasn't a complete absolution of her initial silence, but it was a perspective that allowed her to see beyond her mistakes to the positive outcomes that had resulted despite them. As they turned onto their street, Emma spotted Detective Sanders's car parked in front of their house. "What's she doing here?" Emma asked, suddenly anxious. "Did something happen?" "I don't know," her father admitted, his expression concerned as he pulled into the driveway. Inside, they found Detective Sanders sitting at the kitchen table with Charlotte, both women looking serious. "What's going on?" Emma asked, her earlier exhaustion forgotten in the face of fresh worry. Detective Sanders gestured for her to sit. "We've had a development in the case." During further questioning, Trent Wilson provided information about additional members of their distribution network, including a senior at Brighton named Derek Marshall. The name hit Emma like a physical blow. Derek Marshall, student body president, Honor Society member, early acceptance to Princeton. "Derek is involved?" she asked incredulously. "But he's Derek." According to Trent, Derek was their primary financial backer, Detective Sanders explained. He provided the initial capital to purchase inventory from Reeves, handled the accounting, and laundered the profits through legitimate business ventures, including his father's car dealership. Emma struggled to reconcile this information with the Derek she knew, the boy who organized food drives and tutored underclassmen and always had a friendly word for everyone. "We executed search warrants on Derek's residence and his school locker today," Detective Sanders continued. "We found ledgers confirming Trent's account, along with approximately $35,000 in cash and a small quantity of cocaine." "Is that why you're here?" Emma's father asked, his law enforcement instincts kicking in. "To inform us of another arrest?" Detective Sanders shook her head. "That's part of it, but there's more. In Derek's personal files, we found evidence that he and Jason had a contingency plan in case their operation was discovered. It included detailed information about Emma, her schedule, her route home from school, even the code to your garage door." Emma felt the blood drain from her face. "They were planning to, what? Hurt me? The documents suggest they viewed you as a potential threat even before you discovered their operation," Detective Sanders explained grimly. "Possibly. Because of your father's position with the police department. The contingency plan was labeled insurance, not retribution, but either way, it represents a serious concern for your safety." Emma's mother reached across the table, gripping her hand tightly. "What does this mean for Emma? Is she in danger?" "We believe the immediate threat has been neutralized with the arrests of Jason, Trent, and now Derek," Detective Sanders assured them. "But as a precaution, we're recommending additional security measures for your family until all aspects of this case are resolved." The conversation that followed was surreal. Discussions of security systems, changing routines, being aware of surroundings at all times. By the time Detective Sanders left, promising to keep them updated on any further developments, Emma felt as if she'd somehow stepped into someone else's life. This didn't happen to ordinary high school juniors in suburban Ohio. Except, apparently, it did. That night, as Emma prepared for bed, she heard her parents talking in low, worried voices downstairs. Words like safety and precautions and temporarily relocate drifted up the stairs. She thought about Taylor Mackenzie's grateful face, about Olivia and Marco standing by her side, about Derek Marshall's secret ledgers and Jason's threats, and the ripples that continued to spread outward from what she'd done. For 18 days, she had carried a terrible secret, thinking she could contain it, control it. Now she understood that some truths couldn't be buried or silenced. They found their way to the surface eventually, bringing both destruction and clarity in their wake. As she finally drifted toward sleep, Emma thought about ripples again, how they spread outward, touching everything in their path. How they eventually fade, leaving the water changed but calm once more. She hoped that day would come soon, that the ripples from this ordeal would gradually subside, allowing her to find a new normal, one where she wasn't defined by her mistakes or by what had happened to her, but by the courage she had eventually found to tell the truth, regardless of the consequences. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't the ending she would have chosen for her junior year. But as she closed her eyes, Emma realized it was something she could live with, something she could learn from, something that, perhaps, would make her stronger in ways she couldn't yet imagine. The ripples would continue for a while, but eventually, the waters would calm, and when they did, she would still be standing. 3 months after the arrests that had shaken Brighton High to its core, Emma Davies stood on the freshly mowed lawn outside the courthouse, squinting in the bright August sunshine. The juvenile proceedings against Jason, Trent, and Derek had concluded yesterday with guilty verdicts on all major counts. Though Emma's testimony had been crucial, she'd been spared the ordeal of facing them in court, instead providing her evidence via closed-circuit video. "You okay?" her father asked, standing beside her in his rarely worn suit. Emma nodded, surprising herself with how true it felt. "Yeah, I think I am." Charlotte joined them, slipping an arm around her daughter's waist. "Ready to go home?" "Almost." Emma scanned the courthouse steps until she spotted who she was looking for. "Give me a minute?" She crossed the lawn to where Detective Sanders was speaking with the prosecutor, waiting respectfully until their conversation finished. "Emma," Detective Sanders greeted her with a genuine smile. "You did well. Your testimony was clear and compelling." "Thanks," Emma said. "I just wanted to ask, what happens now? To Jason and the others?" "They'll all serve time in juvenile detention," Detective Sanders explained. "Jason and Trent will remain there until they turn 21. Derek received a slightly shorter sentence due to his cooperation. After release, they'll have probation with strict supervision." Emma nodded, processing this information. "And Dex, the supplier?" "Dexter Reeves accepted a plea deal in exchange for information on his suppliers. He'll serve 15 years in federal prison." Detective Sanders studied Emma's face. "How are you feeling about all this?" "Relieved, mostly," Emma admitted. "And, I don't know, sad, I guess. Not about the verdicts. They deserve those. Just about everything that led to this." Detective Sanders nodded understandingly. "That's natural. This wasn't just a case for you. These were people you knew, trusted. Will it always feel this complicated? The sharpest edges will soften with time," Detective Sanders said. "But yes, complicated feelings are part of difficult experiences. They're not something to run from." Emma considered this wisdom, then asked the question that had been on her mind for weeks. "Do you think I did the right thing? Even though I waited so long to come forward?" "Without question," Detective Sanders replied without hesitation. "Emma, in my 23 years on the force, I've learned that doing the right thing isn't always about perfect timing or flawless execution. It's about finding the courage to act even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult. You found that courage." Something tight in Emma's chest loosened at these words. She'd been carrying the weight of her delayed action for months, questioning whether she deserved any credit for eventually doing the right thing after initially staying silent. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything." As Emma rejoined her parents, she felt lighter somehow, as if Detective Sanders' words had granted her permission to finally forgive herself. The drive home was quiet, each of them lost in their own thoughts about the conclusion of a case that had dominated their lives all summer. When they pulled into their driveway, Emma was surprised to see several cars parked along the curb. "What's going on?" she asked. Her mother smiled mysteriously. "A little gathering. Just a few people who wanted to be here today." Inside, Emma found Olivia, Marcos, Lily, and Mrs. Rodriguez waiting in the living room, along with Taylor Mackenzie and, surprisingly, Zach Wilson. "What are you doing here?" Emma asked Zach, unable to hide her shock. Their last interaction had been less than friendly. Zach shifted uncomfortably. "I, came to apologize for how I acted, for what I said." He glanced at Mrs. Rodriguez, who nodded encouragingly. "After everything came out about what Trent was really involved in, well, I was wrong about a lot of things." The apology was awkward, but sincere. Emma nodded her acceptance, too surprised to form words. "We wanted to be here when you got back from court," Olivia explained, giving Emma a quick hug, "to celebrate the end of this chapter. And the beginning of senior year," Marcos added, "which will be drama-free, relatively speaking." The afternoon unfolded into an impromptu party, with pizza delivery and music and conversations that deliberately avoided any mention of trials or testimonies. For a few hours they were just teenagers again, focused on college applications and summer memories, and whether Mr. Winters would wear his infamous flamingo tie on the first day of school. As the gathering wound down, Taylor pulled Emma aside. "I wanted you to know," she said quietly. "I've been clean for 2 months now. The counseling program Detective Sanders connected us with. It's really helping." "I'm glad," Emma said sincerely. "My mom says I wouldn't have gotten help if you hadn't come forward," Taylor continued. "That I might have ended up using stronger stuff, maybe even—" She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. They both knew what had been at stake. After everyone left, Emma helped her parents clean up. The familiar routine of loading the dishwasher and wiping counters oddly comforting after the emotional intensity of the day. "So," her father said casually, "Dr. Martin called yesterday. She has an opening in her schedule if you want to continue your sessions this fall." Emma considered the suggestion. The therapist her parents had found for her after everything happened had been helpful, providing a safe space to process her complicated feelings about Jason's betrayal, the threats, the fear, and the guilt. "I think I'd like that," she decided. "Maybe just once a month, though. I'm feeling better." Her parents exchanged pleased glances. Later, Emma sat on her bed, scrolling through her phone. The local newspaper's website featured a small article about the conclusion of the Brighton High drug case. No juvenile names were mentioned, but everyone in town knew the story by now. The online comments ranged from supportive to critical, with occasional debates about teenage drug use and school safety measures. Emma closed the browser, unwilling to fall down that particular rabbit hole. Instead, she opened her journal, a habit Dr. Martin had encouraged, and began to write. Today felt like an ending and a beginning all at once. The case is officially closed. Jason, Trent, and Derek will serve their sentences. Taylor is getting the help she needs. Even Zach seems to be changing his perspective. Dr. Martin asked me last week what I've learned from all this. At the time, I couldn't articulate it. But I think I understand now. I learned that silence can be as dangerous as speaking up. That courage isn't about being fearless, but about doing what's right despite your fear. That true friends stand by you through the hardest moments. I learned that I'm stronger than I knew. Senior year starts in 2 weeks. For the first time in months, I'm looking forward to it. Not because I've forgotten what happened. I never will. But because I'm not letting it define me anymore. It's part of my story, but it's not the whole story. The ripples haven't completely faded. Maybe they never will. But I've learned to navigate the waters they've created, and they don't threaten to drown me anymore. Emma closed her journal and glanced at the college brochures spread across her desk. Ohio State, Miami University, Northwestern, schools that had seemed beyond reach during those dark weeks of silence, when her grades were plummeting and her future seemed to be slipping away. Now, they represented possibility again, a fresh start, new ripples of her own making. Outside her window, the summer evening was settling into dusk, fireflies beginning their nightly dance across the lawn. Emma watched them for a moment, these tiny beacons signaling to one another in the gathering darkness. Tomorrow, she would meet Olivia and Marcos at the mall to shop for school supplies. Next week, she had her final counseling session with Mrs. Rodriguez before the new semester. Life was moving forward, one day at a time. The girl who had once kept dangerous secrets out of fear had found her voice. The silence had been broken, replaced by truth, by healing, by hope. And in that truth, Emma had found something unexpected, the person she was meant to be all along. If you were moved by Emma's powerful journey from silence to courage, please take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments below. What part of her story resonated with you the most? Would you have made the same difficult choices she did? Your engagement helps this channel continue creating meaningful content that explores the complex challenges young people face today. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if you'd like to see more stories that tackle real-life issues with depth and authenticity. Your support means everything, and I can't wait to hear what you thought of Girl Refuses to Talk at School.